Hi, so I am going to make quite an interesting video for you, but first I just want to show this tea because this one is really good. This is sage, so it is a herb, and this one is from Flavor Mills, and it's actually produced, I think, in Jordan. And I got this when I was in Jordan, so there is nowhere in Sweden, as far as I'm concerned, that you actually can get this. And I don't know either if they sell this in any other place, like in any other country outside Jordan, but these are among the best herbal teas I ever have found. And I drink quite a lot of tea, so I have tried like numerous different brands of tea. But this is just authentic like herbs. And I really like sage. It's very like cleansing. So I have a, sage tea over here. So I wanted to address something that is sort of making people who are practicing some form of religion very like, making them very passionate, and it's about when people who are, for example, Muslims, practicing Muslims, living in a West European country or in the North America, in those areas in particular, when such Muslims sort of adapting their religious practices away from what the kind of normative form of practices would be, and what would be considered to be the, set of different practices, And the reason to this is actually that an individual is not only shaped by the religion that they are practicing, but also by the society context in which they are leading their daily lives. And in many scenarios, the kind of underlying value system and norms and like the different, just the norms and values of West Europe and North American countries are sort of having different perspective on religion in relation to the public and the private sphere, because it's quite individualized and quite secular countries, and to practice religion in these more public spheres is not the mainstream tendency, And also, for example, Islam has not really been something that is a mainstream practice in the public in these specific countries, and therefore also the sort of values and norms that are considered the mainstream is sort of not what would be considered to be more like Muslim practices and so forth. And how this is sort of taking expression is that an individual who is growing up in, let's say, in Sweden, and going to the public schools in Sweden and getting exposed to the sort of mainstream culture and to the mainstream, value system and to the mainstream religion, if there is any such, or just exposed to different religions, but especially to the culture and different things that are present in that particular society, then those forms of perspective is going to shape the individual in how that individual is viewing their own religion, And in many cases, an individual is also part of of the communities that are sort of apart from the religion that they are practicing, which means that there is other, influences that is important for how that individual is sort of, you know, shaping their identity and their perspectives and so forth. So this means that religion is becoming less of what it has sort of been for maybe for the parent generation, you know. It's sort of taking another form, and this means that, you know, religious practices are not going to be the same as they might were for the parents, you know. So it also is a tendency, you know, to actually something that is called like religious consumerism, which means that an individual is selecting certain religious practices and choosing what he or she or it or whatever want to practice, you know. And that can be, you know, from a specific religion, that the individual is choosing certain practices that that individual want by own decision and by own sort of perspective practice, and taking those and sort of practicing them in comparison to how it might have been for the parents and for like earlier generations, where there was more like a social obligation to sort of practice all these religious practices. And this can also lead to the fact that collective religious practices are getting less significance and less priority for the individual, and that can be in relation to the fact that so many things are very individualized in, you know, in the West European countries and in North America. And this whole religious consumerist behavior is a form of part stemming from the capitalism way of, you know, getting these exchange values. And consumerism is something, it's a form of behavior that an individual is not only applying when it comes to the, you know, the food and the clothes and like the material stuff that he or she or it or whatever is sort of choosing to consume. It also applies to other activities and even to religions and to religious practices, because in this form of setting where the individual is sort of having options presented, and where some of these options are the secular form of culture and practices and so forth, the religion becomes like one of these options, you know, that the individual has the choice to sort of choose from. And that affects how the individual actually is perceiving their own religion, you know. And that's why some people are sort of, you know, maybe adapting other forms of ways of practice their own religion, you know. And so I think that it's quite, because I hear some people who are, you know, considering themselves to be, for example, Muslims, and then when someone who is a Muslim also considering herself, because now I'm talking about women, considering herself to be a Muslim, when she take off, for example, the hijab, people are sort of associating that behavior to be something that she has done something very wrong. But when these things happens during, you know, being influenced by, you know, westernized societies and so forth, I mean, that is like what is, you know, in the sociological understanding, like a natural thing to actually occur, because this individual is exposed to these other forms of values and like secular forms of mindsets and just different, you know, other understandings, you know, for what that individual has, sort of what the individual can sort of do, and that's going to influence, and hence the religion getting less meaning, and the meaning can still be very important and have quite a large priority, you know, for the individual, but it's just going to be expressed maybe in a different form, and maybe it's going to be different from what is considered to be the like normative and like the traditional form of religion. So why I am explaining this is because, first of all, I think it's very sad when people are attacking other Muslims or attacking other Christians or whatever religion, you know, just because one individual who is living in this very challenging context, you know, where they are exposed to so many different other value systems and for example, in West Europe and North America, and then sort of adapting into those ways of thinking and then going about and also changing the understanding for the religion based on that, you know, and that you are attacking someone who is taking actions based on behaviors that has been shaped by other factors that are not within even the religion itself. I think that is like not really targeting the, you know, the processes that are behind that specific behavior, you know. So I think that instead it's better to sort of understand why is this behavior coming forth. And I mean, either way, I think that most people would say that it's not really harming the individual or it's not harming the community and so forth if this individual is going about and doing these forms of individual choices. However, it also should be considered in the light of that, what are we actually viewing to have the highest value, you know? Because a lot of people nowadays are sort of choosing their own understanding of reality based on the American understanding, because it has also an associated financial value to it, you know, and a social status, you know. So a lot of individuals are not choosing the behavior that they feel is what they maybe want to, but or based on religion, but they're choosing depending on what is perceived to add most financial welfare and what is considered to add most social status. There is even a tendency, you know, for people to convert into certain religions if it is considered by the individual's own perspective to sort of add on more social status to that specific individual in the context in wherever the individual is living. And this can even be enforced by the society itself as a strategy, you know, in shaping individuals in the society into adapting into a certain form of mindset or into a certain form of, you know, way of behavior. There is quite a lot of, you know, ways to sort of adapt a behavior in a population, you know, and sort of homogeny, how should I say, like, you know, to create a one form of behavior among the population, you know, that's quite a common thing, you know. So I think it's, instead of like blame one individual who is having a certain religious identity, I think that look at the processes behind that specific behavior and then base judgment not only on the individual and not even on her or his behavior, but on the processes that are underlying that behavior. Because if you understand the processes that are sort of shaping and affecting the way that people are perceiving the religion and their practice and how they're going about and taking these you know, sort of choices in the more Western countries, then it's much easier, you know, to understand why certain things are happening, you know. So yeah, and for me, because, you know, I am born in Sweden, you know, I have this I mean, I have got this form of individualized mindset. And I think even my own way of sort of taking on religion is a form of religious consumerism, but I am aware of it, you know. I am aware of that I am a person, even since I have one specific religion that I try to stay within. I know that even if it should be a social obligation to that religion, I know that because I have grown up in Sweden, I have this mindset that I am sort of choosing the practices that I feel I can adapt into my overall context, or where I might be living at one specific timing. But since I also know that there are so many influences in the overall society on how the society sort of want to shape me and how the society want me to be as a human, I also know that I am not just going to swallow everything that I am just placed, you know, everything that is just enforced upon me. I actually try and choose. If I'm choosing the religion, I actually making an active choice in that, you know. And it's not meant to be simple, because, you know, the sociology and behaviorism is not, I mean, it's very a lot of different actors and agents, you know, in the society that has the knowledge of how behavior and you know, how you can influence an individual to think in a certain way, and they do take you know, they do take advantage of that, and trying to shape how individuals are behaving and how individuals are thinking. Because if you can make an individual think in a certain way, it's very easy, because then you don't have to bother about how that individual is going to go about, because you already have a clue of the outcomes that is going to be you know, coming from that person's specific actions. So yeah, so this is very interesting sort of topics, you know, and there is a lot of like background scientific, you know, sort of gathered information on this. But always when you're looking at how these things also in the scientific fields are explained, it's going to be sometimes in the favor of certain ways of sort of explaining these things, depending on the scientist sort of background knowledge and background episteme and understanding and sort of interest and motive and whatever, you know, because science has quite a lot of subjective forms of perspectives and things included. So yeah, so that is sort of what I wanted to bring forth here, you know. And this is really common among second generation of immigrants who have a certain religion, like their parents coming to us to another country, often coming to a country in West Europe and in West America, or like in North America, and having a religion. This can even be Hinduism or any other Eastern form of religion. And then the second generation, their kids, is going to take on the society's individualized and sort of consumerism mindset, and going to apply that to their religious practice, and therefore their religious practice is going to take another expression than what the parents had, you know. And this can be conflicting, you know, within their own family setting. But I think that instead of blaming the kids or blaming the individual for behaving in that specific way, understand where those behavior, you know, what process is behind that behavior, and also to understand the value systems that actually is infiltrated in the way that the individual is going about and sort of choosing and taking on the religion and the practice, because it does have an influence, you know, in the society context that the individual is leading the life. And certain societies has more, you know, like more like influence on the individuals in the society. I mean, for example, if you have public schools, I mean, some countries do homeschooling, and that is maybe, you know, you're learning certain things, but it maybe is in a different form of setting than if you're in a public school. So, I mean, I'm not saying that public schools are bad, but it's just they're going to give a certain mindset to those individuals who are enrolling the public school. I mean, I went to a public school in Sweden, but that also brought me a lot of ways of sort of perceiving things, and it's only when I actually been in another environment and also going to university and sort of starting to view things from another perspective that I sort of has understood the sort of influences and the forms of way that this public schools are trying also to shape the behavior of the individuals who are there and enrolling it. So yeah, so this tea, I mean, I'm just showing this tea because I really like it. It's something I cannot find it in Sweden, but I'm very happy that I brought some of these with me from Jordan. And I'm gonna enjoy this tea, and I hope this was sort of informative on this matter, because I'm actually reading about this, so that's why I have this sort of information. So thank you.